Hello, everyone, and welcome to another West Kent Spiritist Group live event. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. And you can send your comments on the chat, participate with us, send your questions, and we'll be forwarding them and asking them all as time allows to Suzana. So before we start, we'll open this live with a short prayer. So if you can, and close your eyes and calm your minds, let's just think of the Almighty God and thank Him for the beauty and majesty that we see in all of the creation. We thank you, God, for the opportunity to care for the world you have made. We ask that your blessing would rest on all of us, and that you would give us the strength and wisdom to make a positive impact on those surrounding us. Please bless the efforts of our hands, the bonds between us, and the influence of our work in this location and beyond. Dear Jesus, as we plan and share together now, may you guide us through our spirit benefactors and lead us to be the light in the darkness of this world. So be it. So, for those of us that don't know our group very well, we are the Spiritist West Kent Spiritist Group. We get together every Sunday at 11:30 at the West Peckham Village Hall near Maidstone. And we would like to invite you all, if you're watching us and you're in the Kent area, to join us for our meetings. We start at 11:30 with a get together, a little bit of a coffee and tea and biscuits, just to get to know people and talk. And at 12 o'clock we start our studies. And you'll be more than welcome to join us and take part with us. So today we are going to have Suzana Simões. She was born in Brazil and has been living in the United States for the past 30 years. She was born in a Spiritist family. She's one of the founders of Conscious Living Spiritist Group. She dedicates her time between her family, her work as a doctor of physical therapy and director of rehabilitation, and the dissemination of Spiritism in English and Portuguese. So, without further ado, would like to give you all Suzana. Take the
Hi,
stage.
Leandro.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you
Hello.
for being here with
Good
us.
evening to everyone. It is 3 p.m. here in Miami. Um, I would like to first say thank you for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be here for the first time participating with the West Kent Spiritist Group. So, very exciting for me to be doing this work with you all today. We're gonna bring the presentation in. There you go. Okay, so today we are going to talk about tackling selfishness by the route, a road back to safety and peace. And I always like to start by explaining a little bit of the title and the choice of the particular study. So I think we can say that we all wish to live in a world where we can feel safe and peaceful and happy. Imagine living in a world where there are no threats because no one is able to or conceive the idea of harming anyone else, where your children can grow up with a sense of safety and freedom to play, to be whoever they are, without concerns of prejudice, of being harmed by anyone else, and where everybody's working, producing under a paradigm of cooperation instead of competition. Sounds wonderful. And I think that's what we all would like to have and to experience someday, and we will experience someday. But in Spiritism, we learned that the root of all our problems is selfishness. And if you have been in Spiritism for a while, you certainly have learned, watched lectures that talk about selfishness and pride, and the need to overcome these two uh, immense hurdles in our path. But we keep talking about this, we keep studying the topic. And my question is, after we listen to a lecture and study the topic, then what? What is it that we are doing? What kind of changes are we seeing? How effective this path of listening to lectures and watching speakers, how powerful, how efficient it is, because we keep talking about the same things and it's unclear if we're actually making any strides or not towards a different and a better place to live in. So hopefully today's lecture will help you to find some material and resources to help you not only to think about the topic, but actually to do something about it. So I'm going to be bringing to you today some of the texts that you find in the works of Allan Kardec. One of them in particular is from a book called Posthumous Work that is not yet translated, but all the others are. So you'll find material in the Spirit's book, in the Gospel, those two primary together with this other book. If you're Brazilian, you'll be able to access it. So I'm going to start with this initial statement that says selfishness is the denial of charity. Without charity, there is no rest for society. I say more, there is no safety. Life will always be a competition where the wisest will win, a fight of interests capable of destroying the most precious affections and family ties, as long as selfishness and pride are holding hands. So this is a pretty strong statement that we find. And I don't know if, many people who have been in spiritism may not be so familiar with this particular text. And I put in big letters the correlation between selfishness being an opposition of charity. And without charity, usually we say there is no salvation. And here it says there is no rest. So if there is no peace, we can never rest. We are constantly in a state of fight, of struggle, of defensiveness, without armors, without weapons. And this is how we get up each day, and this is how we go on our lives each day. In other words, we live under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure, under a lot of tension, with no sense of safety and no ability to rest. So when Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are burdened and overwhelmed, because this is what I have to offer you, I have to offer you rest," is because he has a formula. He offers a paradigm that is a paradigm of brotherhood, of cooperation, the antithesis of selfishness. So in this paradigm that he offers is a place where we will find no threats and we will be able to rest. In addition to that, this sentence tells us about, without charity, without love, we are constantly also competing. We're always trying to win. We're always trying to be at the top. We don't have yet the understanding that there is a place at the top for everyone, a place to be shared. We are constantly trying to overcome one another. And again, life becomes much of a struggle, and this selfishness erodes even the most precious relationships that we have. Okay, so when we think of selfishness, we think of a legacy. This word comes to mind because when we think of an inheritance, it's something that we leave for our kids, for example. But a legacy is something that you are living as you are living. You are living as you're living. So it is what we're living for our generation right here at the present moment. So if you want to have a positive legacy, the best way to do that is to tackle your own issues, limitations, darkness, so that you can leave a better and more precious, or you can make a better and more precious contribution on every day of your life. And that's what, again, this is what we are trying to head towards. Not only to think about what we're leaving for the next future generations, which one day will be part of, but what kind of legacy we're leaving for the world today with our living, with our examples. So one way to go about this, which is the most efficient way, is to go to the root cause, right? So when you have a problem, I'm a physical therapist, I work in a big hospital. If something happens and it's harmful, we do a root cause analysis. What does that mean? We ask many times why, until we get to the very root of the problem. So if we go down to the root of this problem, it is in our disconnection from God, in our disconnection from what is essential, in our disconnection from our own nature, from our own divinity, and from this higher source. This disconnection creates this sense of scarcity that prevails in our society. So, the opposite of scarcity would be abundance. You feel so abundant that you're constantly giving without any fear, because you know that you are immortal, you know that you are love, you know the love prevails. So you're in a very center state, a state of connection and abundance with what is real. We are disconnected, and therefore we live this sense of scarcity, of insufficiency, of inadequacy, and so forth. And selfishness is born in part from this source. In addition to that, when we think about the origin of selfishness, right, it comes from the instinct of conservation. But the instinct of conservation is what keeps us alive. So I got this picture of this big lion because when we think of wild animals, they have this instinct of conservation that make them fight and kill so that they can survive, they can remain alive. And as animals that we are in our nature, especially incarnated in a physical body, we have the instinct of conservation that helps us to stay alive. But this instinct, although it is natural and it is divine in nature, it can get exacerbated. And it is the exacerbation of the instinct when the instinct becomes pathological or it becomes displaced. Um, it's used in moments and times where it's really not needed. But we are under the impression that we must fight, that we must win, that we must attack. Um, and a lot of times that sense is born from fear, and the instinct gets exacerbated. That's when it becomes a problem that a lot of times is going to manifest as in the form of behaviors that we call selfish behaviors, or behaviors that involve pride, for instance. Okay, so not sure why this is. I think I can read. The contrast is a little different here on StreamYard. But when still looking into the origin of selfishness, so we can understand where it comes from, if we go to questions 915 and 17 of the Spirit's book, we're going to learn there that it is connected to the inferior nature of the spirits incarnated on the earth and not the human species per se, which is a very consoling concept if you think about it, because basically what's telling us is that selfishness is not um, It's not part of the human nature. It is part of a stage of the human evolution. So if we understand this difference, we can find again hope in our own humanity, in our brothers and sisters, and in ourselves included, because we are part of the humanity. So it's not, it does not speak to the essence of who we are, but to where we are in our evolution. And question 917 says that selfishness is connected to the influence of matter, from which human beings are still too close to their origin, cannot free themselves. So again, it is the more we are in this material realm, and our bodies right now are very, very material. We are very much in the beginning of our evolution. Although we have done some good job, good work in evolving intellectually, morally, we are still like really lagging behind. So we are very much connected and identified with everything that is material. We identify, for instance, very strongly with our physical bodies, so much so that our value as human beings comes from the way we see ourselves, whether we're young or old, whether we are fat or skinny or whatever, right? So we are constantly trying to change our physical bodies, seeking to be beautiful, because if we believe that if we're beautiful, we'll be liked, and if we like, we're going to belong. But we don't realize that we are seeking beautification in the wrong places, because anything and everything that is material is not real, is not forever. So we get very sidetracked here, and that's just to give an example of how identify with the material realm we still are. And therefore, this influence, the lack of understanding, the lack of consciousness and integration of our own immortality and our own essence in our daily living, also fosters this passion, the exacerbation of it, and all the problems that we see and we experience. When we go, these are two questions that I really love about the Spirits book, because they talk exactly about the same thing in different ways. So in question 895, it talks about self-interest. And the spirits are going to tell Kardec that self-interest is the most characteristic sign of imperfection, the most characteristic sign of imperfection. And true disinterestedness is rare on earth. So what this means is that in anything and everything that we do, no matter what it is, in any, and we're going to see that a little later, in any type of relationship or circumstance, we are at the center of the world. Everything else is being done, perceived, and we act always, always with our self-interest in place. And I'm hoping to help you to see that in a little bit more. But I wanted to present you here what the spirits, the superior spirits, are telling Kardec, because if you disagree with this idea, then you disagree with them and not with me. Now, in question 893, the spirits are going to tell Kardec that um, in response to his question, which is the most meritorious of all virtues, they're going to say the highest virtue is the sacrifice of self-interest. So it leaves no doubt two questions talking about the same thing, identifying the most characteristic sign of imperfection, and also on the other end of the spectrum, what is the most meritorious of all the virtues is the one that sacrifices the most characteristic sign of imperfection, which is self-interest. So in this state of things, right, where we are so self-centered, we are so disconnected, we are coming from a paradigm and a belief of scarcity and not abundance, then we live our lives defending ourselves from one another. So going back to Kardec, we find this statement: the shock that humans experience from the selfishness of others usually makes them selfish in turn, because they feel the need to put themselves on the defensive. Seeing that others think of themselves and not of them, they are in turn led to be concerned about themselves more than about others. Well, that is so true. So I'm all giving, all good, and then I realize that my friend, that my relative, you know, it's not as concerned with me, it's not as giving, it's not retributing what I have given. So I say, well, if he's not willing to do that for me, why bother doing that for him or her? So a lot of times we get into this very defensive mode, is still enacting very much the law of Moses, an eye for an eye, and um, putting aside all the teachings of Jesus, who came to really change the landscape of the earth by offering a completely new paradigm. So what we are invited to do is to rise above. As spiritists and as Christians, above all, we invited to act differently, to be the change that we want to see in the world, right? So why do we see wars that never end? Because no one rises above, because no one takes the step to say, I'm going to break this cycle of violence, I'm going to break this cycle of indifference. So it's important that we understand that we are defending ourselves um, quite often, so that through awareness we can actually start to enacting our humanity, which is our ability to think, to reason, and to override our instincts. Okay, so when we look at the dimension of selfishness, how prevalent this is, how big of a deal this is, in question 913, among all the vices which may we regard as the root, and the Spirit says selfishness. All evil derives from it. Study all the vices and you'll see that selfishness is at the bottom of them all. Selfishness neutralizes all other qualities. That is, I don't know if you who have already studied the Spirit's book and who continues to study takes the time to read these questions and really, really, really think about them. So this is a very vital question, because um, we do know in general that selfishness is at the root of everything. But this last sentence where it says that selfishness neutralizes all other qualities. So it doesn't matter if you were trying to be patient, if you're trying to be loving, if you're trying to be good, if selfishness is still present, it neutralizes all the other virtues. Why? Because embedded in what you call the virtues you are developing is yourself, is your self-interest, which makes everything that you're doing and developing conditional to you being seen, being perceived, being loved by others. So it's tricky, it's difficult, but I'm going to leave it this for you to think about. And in your groups, you can go back, you can reflect about it, you can discuss, but it's a very interesting answer that the spirits give us here in this question. Moving on. Okay, so I wanted to present to you this introduction that is 45 minutes very quickly. I have some studies, more in depth studies on this. Um, and if you were Brazilian, I'm sorry for the Americans. There are some lives that I did with Marlon Reikdal on his book, three entire lives talking about selfishness, where we go very much in depth on these topics. But tackling selfishness, so let's look at that. So we need to seize the moment that we are in, which is today. And we do that by um, raising our awareness, by trying to live our lives in a conscious way. Because again, a lot of times we're talking about those things, but okay, then what? I see that we have this huge problem, but okay, what am I supposed to do now, right? Where do I start? So we need to understand that in this present moment, we are living a very difficult moment with many crises and challenges in our world. And in question 916, we learned that the greater the evil, the more heinous it becomes. It has been necessary for selfishness to produce much evil to make you understand the need to uproot it. So sometimes, a lot of times, things get to a level of disorganization and chaos such that we are left with no option than to seek solutions for the state of things because they become unbearable. And that is a method that God uses and allows so that from the darkness that we create, we can find the strength and the means to change things. So crises are, although they are bad because they challenge and they can be very, very difficult, in each crisis also resides incredible potential for transformation. Because when someone is in a crisis, it's like when our foundation is often shaken to a point where we are moved, we are jolted out of our inertia. um, we tend to accommodate, we tend to become indifferent, we tend to becoming sensitive to the suffering of others. And so crises are very powerful methods to help us to expand our vision and get in touch again to our feelings, and as I said, to seek solutions. So the solutions will not come, unfortunately, through the proclamation of a different way of being. And this is what we find here. I found this text very inspiring. Of course, it's wonderful to proclaim the kingdom of fraternity. Let's be fraternal. Let's be loving. Let's be peaceful. But peace in a better world will not come by proclamation. By me talking to you today, certainly not. Um, but how can this be done if there is a destructive cause? There would be building on unwholesome soil. In such a kingdom, if one desires people to fare well, it's not enough to send them doctors, because doctors will die like everyone else. One must destroy the causes of unhealthiness. If one desires that they live like brothers and sisters, it's not enough to give them lessons on morality. It is necessary to destroy the causes of the causes of oh my god, I cannot read this. To attack the root of the evil, pride and selfishness. So, but I think it's clear, right? So there is a disease, there is an illness. You can send the doctors to treat the people, but more important than that is you need to send a team that can actually treat whatever is causing the illness in first place. Otherwise, doctors too will die. So that's what we're looking for. So, which weapons can we use in this fight? And here is what the gospel will recommend. Selfishness is the target at which all true believers must aim their weapons, which are strength and courage. I say courage because more courage is needed to overcome oneself than to overcome other people. Let all of you, therefore, make every effort to fight selfishness within you. For that monster that devours all minds, that child of pride, is the source of all the miseries of this world and the greatest obstacle to human happiness. Okay, so courage. We need courage. We need the courage to go within. The change in the world is going to happen one heart at a time. So we got to concern ourselves with the identification of selfishness within us. And I bet you, if I could be with you, talking to you, asking you questions, I would say to you, give me a number, 0 to 10, how selfish you are. And a lot of people would not even know where to start because we don't even recognize where the selfishness and all the ways in which selfishness is manifesting in our daily lives. So, this is why it's so inefficient because we keep talking about it, we keep studying about it. But if we study the entire codification and become doctors in Spiritism, but we have no clue about our own selves, then that treasure is wasted because you cannot make the connection between the cognitive knowledge and the emotional knowledge. So, this is where we are as humanities. We need now to become doctors of our own souls in the sense of knowing and understanding who we are and our behaviors and the emotions underneath the behaviors. So in the gospel, we also find this statement: if people were to mutually love one another, charity would be practiced more perfectly. However, for this to happen, you would have to make an effort to free yourselves of the breastplate covering your heart so that you may be able to be more sensitive to those who suffer. So I love the image of breastplate. I did talk about in the beginning how we wake up and we go out to our daily lives in our armors, very ready to fight and to defend what is mine, my family, ours, all possessive pronouns. And we put this breastplate, we put this all this kind of emotional defensiveness, indifference, jealousy, pride, and many other ways in which we defend ourselves. So, one of the first things is to understand what are our defenses so that we can be open to humanity, ours and of our neighbors. So, again, so I would ask you, how selfish am I? This is a question, this is a homework for all of you to give yourselves a number and then ask yourself, okay, how do I tackle selfishness? Understanding that selfishness is a shallow manifestation, is a behavior that has many layers underneath. And the way that we tackle selfishness or any behavior or any passion is by understanding the frailty and the wounds and the needs that we have as human beings that are leading or triggering or generating this type of behavior. So the work starts like that with recognition and awareness. We have to do what Jesus said, recommended that we did every day, which is watch and pray. Watch our own selves. How do I do that? Watch your relating. Watch your emotions. Watch above all your reactions. Because when you are wanting to know who you truly are, you don't investigate what you're doing. You investigate how you're reacting to others. Your reactions are a very fertile environment, soil for you to start digging. Why am I reacting with such anger? Why am I being hostile? Why am I so impatient? Why am I so wounded? Why am I so sad? So, this is all reactions to people and to circumstances that will reveal to us who we truly are or where we truly are in our evolution. So, I want to give you something that can help you guys to identify the extension of selfishness in our daily lives. You may or may not be aware of how selfish you are. I presented the whole theory of the origin and went over what the spirit said, how that is the root, how that is the cause for everything. So if this is the root and the cause for everything, it's so incredibly important that we recognize where selfishness is manifesting in our daily lives. So I have here 4 situations in these squares. The first one is with our partners. Oh, yeah, I love my partner. I love my wife. I love my husband. And I try to do, I'm really nice to him or to her. I'm attentive. I fix breakfast. I take him or her out for dinner, bring flowers, and whatever else that you do. You do that for him and her, or you do that for yourself? Well, the answer is both. It's both. Because part of us wants to be loved, wants for our spouse to think that we are absolutely the right person for them. And we want to be sure that they will not change us for anyone else. We want to be sure that they will not abandon us, that they will not cheat on us. And we want to feel that they want us. We want to be wanted, right? So, who is at the center of this affection? For us to think. Now, if you have a friend, you're really generous, you love doing stuff for your friend. Think of a good friend, right? Someone who you identify, and so you make yourself available to your friend, you do little sacrifices for your friends. But are you doing for your friend or for yourself? Because what happens if your friend, when you need your friend to be available for you, he or she is not? Or when you think that he or she would be giving you something, their time, some resources, or whatever that might be, and they don't, then how do you feel? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? But did you give that to them because you truly love them, or did you have any expectation of receiving back? So in these friendships, a lot of times we are also at the center of the relationship. Our own interest is at the center of the relationship. When we do charity, oh yeah, I love to do charity. I love to help people. It makes me so happy. But a lot of times when we're doing charity, what we makes us really happy is our own version, the version of ourselves in that moment. Because we have the root is our disconnection, we very often have low self-esteem that is across our humanity. We feel very bad about ourselves, but when we're doing charity, we look so good, and I love who I am in that moment. So again, it's self-serving. Now, I'm not saying that that's all that is. All I'm saying is that my point is that in everything that we do, there are shades of self interest very much embedded in the relating and the circumstances. We do donations, we do financial donations. Oh, I know in Spiritism says that I shouldn't talk about that. So I'm not going to post on social media, I'm not going to tell anyone. But then I go to bed and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself because I didn't tell anyone. That sense of pride, um, although there is positive pride, but a lot of times it's about you again feeling good about yourself because you don't naturally feel good about yourself. If that is not enough to convince you that we are at the center of everything that we do, here are some clear symptoms that can help us to identify our centeredness. When we find others to be ungrateful, when we feel resentment, frustration, anger, or disappointment at someone, it is usually because they are not attending to our expectations that will meet our personal needs. So that's kind of easier way to see that. Um, there is something called shared selfishness, which happens, for example, on couples where, let's say, a man I'm going to use a very gender bias example here, but just for the purpose of the moment. So you have a man that's in charge of the finances and the woman's in charge of the house. So the woman would like for the finances to be done slightly different, and the man would like for the house to be managed slightly different. That's an area of conflict where both would need to leave the center in order to compromise and come to a mutual agreement. But shared selfishness is when the couple says, well, that's your area, so I will not touch that. But in this area, that's mine. You don't touch mine area. So there's very little movement towards the other. There's no effort to understand where the other person is coming from. There's lack of curiosity about why the other person wants things that way. And there is this agreeable submission. So we call their shared selfishness. Parental love is an incredible area of self-gratification. And it's very easy to see we want our kids to succeed. Social media is a uh, kind of a storefront where we display our kids' success, and no one is talking about their kids' struggles and difficulties, because once my kids is struggling and having difficulties, how do I look as a parent? So again, how do I look as a parent? So it goes back to yourself once more. Okay, so we're coming to an end. So we're getting into the solution journey. So far we have had two moments. I always like going back a little bit so I can organize the information for you so you can leave here with something a little bit more structured in your mind. We did talk first about the origin, where selfishness comes from, the roots. Now we talk about um, the need to go within to tackle selfishness within. So we are talking about the manifestation of selfishness in our daily lives. So it's a little easier for us to understand and have a starting point, right? So once we turn off here, go to bed, go to sleep, dream about a better world and how tomorrow you're going to start doing things slightly different. So here's our humankind current state. So we live in this place of scarcity, we are blind to others, and we are in disconnection. The way we relate, we love to be loved, we love to be reassured, we give to receive, and we recognize to be recognized. Oh my God, Suzana, I'm going to be so depressed tonight because you were just shattering all my illusions, and that's okay. A lot of times, in order to grow, we need to deconstruct to be able to rebuild. So, yes, let it break down the illusions. Don't feel bad. This is where we are. This is what we have for today. Love is something that we learn. Joanna de Angelis says that love is something that we learn. So we are in a stage of love. This is the way we know to love. So it's not the end of the world, and we're not bad because of that. We're humans because of that. What do we do with that? We seek to be aware. The more we bring these things into our awareness without judgment, because once we judge, we reject, we separate, we hide. So non-judgment is an essential part of the process. Be able to see what is for what it is. And okay, now I have consciousness, and I can start to think about it. I can start to be curious about it. I can start to look for what is underneath. I can allow my feelings to arise. And in that process alone, a lot of movement takes place within, a lot of things get dissolved, and space for the new starts to open, and new things start to bloom within yourself because you declutter your inner world from all these things that are obstacles for a better version of yourself to be born. So the state of things as it is what we call the normal. We need to challenge the normal. We need to bring the spiritual perspective, the Christian perspective, that we can do more. There's more that can be done. There's different ways that we can live. And understand that charity and fraternity sum up all conditions and social duties. However, they presuppose selflessness. So charity and fraternity sum up all the conditions and social duties, all that we should be doing, but they presuppose selflessness. So you can see it's a journey, right? This is the end here. Right now, we do selfishness charity. We love in a selfish way, but we are on the road, and this is our aim, so to speak. So the road back to safety, so we can have this world where we're going to have more safety, more peace, and more harmony, starts again with our commitment, personal commitment towards a selfless self. And that comes from connection. Connection with ourselves. The more we can connect with our own selves, with our light, with our potentialities, with our divine, with our darkness, with our limitations, with everything that we are, the more we're able to embrace our own humanity, the better and the more skilled we become at non-judgment, at self-love, at self-acceptance, the better we'll be able to connect with somebody else. So it starts with us. Love God above all and your neighbor as yourself. So we have to know ourselves. We have to love the enemy within. So in this way, with all our parts, the ones that we dislike, in this way we'll be able to love others in a much more effective and inclusive way. So the road is connection, is centeredness, is to understand that we are immortal beings, is self-love, and this is what will take us to this place of abundance where we are no longer going to be competing. We're no longer going to be trying to eliminate our brothers and sisters, and we will understand that the world is made to be shared, and there is a place and there is a space for anyone and everyone to be. I will close with the widow's mite passage just very briefly. That is the passage where the widow, who's very, very, very poor, she goes to the temple and makes a donation, gives the mite, which is the the currency of the time, worth very, very little. And very often, this passage in the gospel is interpreted as look at her, she had nothing and she gave from what she did not have, which is absolutely true if you think from a material perspective. However, this widow, she was wealthy. She is the representation of someone who lives in a state of abundance. She had so much. She was so centered. She was so connected that she was capable of giving materially from what she did not have. When we are that connected, when we are that abundant, we have no fear. We are in a complete state of trust and alignment with God. So there is no fear. When there is no fear, there's nothing to be protected against, and we are now able to give abundantly, which is what she represents. So I love this idea, and I think that this is what we are aiming to achieve. And this is it, my friends. So I hope this presentation um, can be inspiring. And I spoke a little fast because I was trying to get everything in. And one day we're going to be in a place where the world will not be so tearful because each one of us will be experiencing this state of abundance and peace within. So thank you.
And thank you, Suzana, for such a wonderful talk. It's a lot to cram in such a limited amount of time, isn't it?
Well, yes, yes, I did my best. I think it went well.
No, it went wonderfully, and you covered a lot of ground. And I was thinking, obviously, I got a few questions for you because you
Uh-huh.
made me think a lot about the pride and selfishness and so on. So then coming into a question, if everything that we do is based or motivated by selfishness, how can we purge ourselves from this sentiment, from this flaw then?
Right. I think, like I said, it's not going to, first of all, the awareness that's not going to be in this lifetime. It's a journey. Okay. So no anxiety around that. Um, the most powerful tool for self transformation is awareness. So if you, like I said, if you don't even know, I have a lecture on pride and I do the same thing. Excuse me 1 second. I ask people, we're talking about pride all the time. Where is pride manifesting in your life? People don't know. So, for instance, when you get impatient with an elderly person, that's pride. You think you're better than them. If you walking fast and someone is slow and you're irritated, that's pride because you think they should be walking at your pace and not you at their pace. So it comes from a sense of superiority. Pride manifests in our lives in so many ways. We're clueless. We have no idea. So, like I said, we are where we are because we know so much intellectually. And when it comes to reading our own behavior and our actions and reactions and feelings and emotions, we are like, in first grade, we are learning to spell. We don't know. So it's being very inefficient, everything that we have been doing, because we can people can cite the spirit's book questions by heart, but they have no idea where pride and selfishness is in them. So what do you do with that? It's like it serves for nothing until we start to. And so I think mindfulness comes to mind. So be present, pay attention to yourself. I like to say that our emotions are the way in which our soul speaks to ourselves, is God's language within. So emotions are messengers, messengers of the soul. So when you were angry, when you were sad, when you were irritated and frustrated, it's your soul telling you something. You have to take the time and ask yourself, what is going on here? Why am I feeling this way? It's never about the people that you were dealing with, it's always about yourself, because you can say something to two people, the same statement, and the statement can be received and interpreted and felt in a completely different way. So it's not what was said, is the soil in which that message fell, and and what you bring to that circumstance in terms of what is eliciting your reaction. So that is the path. On one side is studying, yes, knowing the theory, because the more we know, the more it helps us to discern. So yes, we need to know that, but we need to accelerate our work in terms of understanding of human psychic and emotions.
Sorry, I was on mute. So
It's
yes,
okay.
and it goes back to that symptom check that you were talking about during your presentation, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because sometimes, and I think perhaps a lot of times, when
Uh-huh.
we have encounters with others, and something really nags me about them, or disturbs me, or even makes me angry. I
Right.
think a lot of times this is a reflection of ourselves, isn't it? Like, especially when it comes to, let's say, selfishness. When I find someone, oh, it's he or she is so extremely selfish, there's most likely to be a degree of of a reflection of my own selfishness. And
Yes,
that's
yes.
what I'm recognizing, isn't it?
Yes, I have a very good example. I like sometimes to throw some personal examples because um, they are very concrete and relatable. So I can be rigid sometimes. And so if you were talking, or quite often, so I have a brother who I find to be also that. And I easily recognize his rigidity, because a lot of times, if I am in a conversation with him and he's being rigid and I'm finding him to be rigid, what does that tell me? It tells me
Exactly.
that I am being rigid on my end, and that's why I feel him as being rigid, because he's not yielding in my direction. But so nor am I in his direction. He's insensitive to
Yeah.
where I am, but so am I in where he is. So yeah, it's a mirror, right? It mirrors, and that's why we can't evolve without relationships, because relationships are the only source that can really test where we are, and that reveals who we are. Because you can be a saint at the top of the mountain, but when you come down and you have to deal with the heterogeneity of characters and tastes and tendencies, that's when you are put to test, and you can truly see who you are or where you are in your evolution.
Yes, absolutely. And it is like you said, is having the courage then to analyze our feelings and our emotions, on a daily basis or maybe hourly basis,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and confront ourselves, not so much as the other, but ourselves, and then work within ourselves to obviously make us to be a better person today than we were yesterday, right?
Of course, that's the way.
Absolutely. Susanna, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful presentation and for your talk and for everything that you covered into this in this talk. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask you just to do as a closing prayer then.
Absolutely. I will, and just want to thank you again for this opportunity. And hopefully, we'll be with you guys some other time in the near future, either online or in person. Would love to get to know the work over there. So,
Absolutely. Let you have
okay,
you here.
let's do our prayer. So, dear Father, thank you so much for this time, for this opportunity to connect this wonderful, wonderful means, the internet, that allows the world today to be so much smaller and be able to meet and make new friends who live far away. Help us to have the courage and, above all, the determination to also invest and move forward with our moral progress, with the understanding of who we are, having the humility, the humbleness to see what needs to be seen, and to open to what it is, so that consciousness and awareness can lead the way towards our transformation. Thank you so much for everything that we have, for who we are. Bless all of us who are connected here or who maybe listen to this talk at near future, and bless this group so that they can continue with their studies and the dissemination of this wonderful message um, where they are. Thank you so much for everything, and so be it. You muted. You muted. I cannot
So
hear you.
so
Oh,
sorry.
there you go.
Keep doing this. So I just want to say, I was just saying thank you again, and thank you all for being here. And for those who will join us in the future, this live is going to be obviously on YouTube, available for anyone who'd like to come back and watch again. And I'm sure I'll be doing that because there's much more to learn from everything that Suzana covered. So thank you so much. God be with you all, and I hope to see you guys on our next live. Thank you, Suzana. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.